requirements do apply to a gathering of commissioners, there are certain things that have to be taken care of both before, during, and after the meeting in order to comply with the law. And people will call us on it. It happens all the time. I work with municipalities all over the state, and they get public records requests and public meetings law complaints all the time, and it's a real nightmare. So just real briefly, if the public meetings requirements do apply to us, there is a notice requirement. You've got to provide notice of the meeting in advance. You've got to tell people where the meeting's going to be. You've got to provide a space for people to be there that's accessible to everybody, that doesn't discriminate on any basis. So things like emails, Skype. If you've got a quorum, it's almost impossible to comply with public meetings laws over email and Skype. I think you could theoretically try to do it, but it would be, I think personally, it would be legally impossible to do it over at least email. So this is here for our guidance. I would encourage everybody to read it. There's also a statute, well, there are a number of statutes, but it's ORS 192.610 through 192.710. I would encourage everybody to read the statute. I think the more familiar we all are with the rules that apply to us, the more effective we can be, and the less time we can waste wondering if we can do this and if we can do that. I think the thing to keep in mind for email is that announcements are not public meetings. So if I'm telling you I'm going to the store today, and I tell everybody in the commission about that, and it's not a public meeting. But if somebody replies all and says, hey, will you pick up food for the Human Rights Commission meeting? That all of a sudden we are now violating the law. And so it seems sort of silly in a way that we can't do those kinds of things. But best practice is to just never engage a quorum on email or Skype or FaceTime or social media. And if you are going to email the group, that's fine. Just make sure you say, please don't reply at all. So,
a more realistic example of what Scott's talking about is if you send an email saying, hey, I'm going to the NAACP's event on police brutality, where they're putting forward their proposal to the city, and then if the reply all is, hey, should we endorse that, or should we make a comment about that? Now suddenly we've created a public meeting violation.
I actually don't think Kyle's example is a probably a little grave, because again, I can reply all. If you ask me, can we meet on Wednesday, and everybody replies all, yes we can, that's
well, it depends, because it could be argued that you are deliberating toward the making of a decision that would require a quorum. So I agree with you, I don't think it would be, but if you look at the practice note, on page 6, the best practices are that if you ever are aware that a quorum is going to exist, follow the public meetings law, and if you're not sure, call the city attorney. That's the best way to do
I think we
it.
should get some direction.
Sure.
It would be helpful for me to know that council or subgroups need to be under a certain number, which is in this rate to me, or else that would happen on a regular basis. So what is that?
The quorum is a majority, simple majority of the entire commission.
Which would be
8, because we have 15
Eight
members.
if we're at full capacity.
Right, and that's an important point, because it depends on the number of commissioners at the time you're making the determination. So if it's still 8 if we have 14. Oh, we have 13? Okay, then it's 7.
It's never less than 7.
And I was encouraging a good way for us to track that would be that at every meeting we do a quorum check. Right now, what constitutes a quorum?
8 would, 7 wouldn't.
7 is a quorum now.
7 is we're currently at
Because we have 13
7.
commissioners.
Until Rebecca and
Shabri and Rebecca have not been confirmed yet.
Right. Last thing about public meetings, social gatherings are never public meetings unless you have a quorum and you all decide that you're going to talk business. So if there's a social gathering, we're doing a party with the Peapod or something like that, don't talk business, just don't. Otherwise, you will be violating the law. The very last thing, and I know we have to move on, public speaking guidelines are also starting on page 7. So we start with action process, go to public records, and then public speaking guidelines. I was asked to put this together quite a while back, and then also to put it in here. I think the takeaway message that is the most important is that the chair of the commission is the only person with the authority under our bylaws to make public comment about commission business and take positions of the commission, unless the chair is unavailable, and then it becomes the vice chair's duty to do that. And if both the vice chair and the chair are unavailable, then it's their duty to assign a designee who will have that responsibility. So when out in public, obviously, as a commission member, you're not forfeiting your right to speak on matters of public concern or to serve in a public duty capacity. But if you are making comments about anything that could be even remotely interpreted to be commission business, you need to preface those comments with, I'm speaking in an individual capacity and not as a member of the Human Rights Commission. The one caveat to that is chairs of subcommittees. Chairs of subcommittees under our bylaws are allowed to make public comment on behalf of the committee, not on behalf of the commission. And so they are required to say, I'm speaking on behalf of the Housing Rights Task Force, not the Human Rights Commission.
You just gave Sam
Yeah.
an exciting opportunity.
Good to know. Got a few now.
Sounds good.
Does that apply to subcommittees?
Just committees and task forces. So,
So the nomination committee's gonna be reduced.
but it has to be limited to the subject matter of the committee, and it has to be prefaced with committees. Read the materials.
Absolutely.
And just for the record, chairs of committees may be removed.
Serving the pleasure of the commission.
And nobody other than the chair or the chain of command, if the chair is not available, are authorized to commit the commission to any action without a vote of the commission or the executive committee in the rapid response process. So it's all in here. Those are just some real brief highlights. If you have any questions about this stuff, let me know, and I'd be happy to talk to you about it. And if there are additions that need to be made or amendments that need to be made, we can do that. So,
Thank you for doing
Thank
that.
you.
yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Dean. And thank you to everyone who got here at 3 and was here, able to join our meeting. So we're going to move right into our main meeting. I will give about 2 minutes if you need to get some water, get some food. So I want to start by welcoming everyone to the Human Rights Commission meeting. Today, obviously, is June 4th for the sake of our videographer. We're going to start by introducing ourselves, and if we have just a brief minute for everyone, just to briefly stand up, give us your name and which organization or community alliance that you may be with. I'll start. My name is Sonia Young. I'm the chair for the Human Rights Commission, and I'll move to my left.
I'm Kate Fuller, member of the commission.
Kyle Lessie, Commissioner.
Amy Samara Kraska, Commissioner.
Lloyd Good, Commissioner.
Sam Sachs, Commissioner.
Jeff Selby with the Office of Equity and Human Rights.
Diallo Bennett, Commissioner.
Rebecca Nega.
Shabri Vickers. Damon Isaiah Turner.
Ashley Horn, Commissioner.
Alan Lazo, hungry.
And if we could move out to the audience, starting with you, ma'am, yes.
Isabel Sheridan, representing Ending the New Jim Crow, Healing the Justice System group from First Unitarian Church.
And I'm Mike Tabor, filming for independent media, putting it on joeanybody.com.
My name is Josue, and I heard about this through Enlace.
Jamie Trinkle with Enlace.
Crystal Contreras, Portland Central America Solidarity Committee.
Mari Mendez por Enlace.
Kathy Coon, Enlace.
Sarah Slutzoff, Portland State University Student Union, Student Action Coalition, and student publication, The Spectrum Magazine.
Glenn Newman joined.
Aubrey McDaniel, join.
Yvonne Kunster, Portland Commission on Disability.
Okay. So we're going to begin, commissioners, if you could look over the meeting minutes from our May 7th meeting. Are there any changes, proposed amendments to the May 7th meeting minutes? If there are no amendments, is there a motion to approve May 7th meeting minutes?
Second.
All of those in favor of approving the May 7th meeting minutes, please say so with an aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, abstentions? The meeting minutes for May 7th have been approved. Let's take a look at today's agenda, June 4th. Are there any amendments to today's agenda?
Just a question, have you heard from the admiral about his arrival?
I have not.
Okay, so we just, Dayala, are you interested in reporting for Vercom in case he doesn't show? Okay.
So Diallo, I'll just make a mental.
Can someone, did we talk about the date for the July meeting? Maybe just a meeting announcement.
So at the July meeting to the events and emerging issues?
Yeah, just the date,
Okay.
since it's that. Last couple days before.
Any other meeting agenda amendments? Questions? Any questions? Okay.
Sorry, real quick, I just wondered if there's somebody designated to report on the fall roundtable? Is that Alan?
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes.
I may have made an oversight, but I just want to clarify because I want somebody to be here that thinks they're doing something that they're not. At our executive committee meeting, we discussed Enlace having time on the agenda. Was that?
That's number 7, no?
Is that number 7? I thought that was number 7.
Oh, was that number 7? Okay, sorry.
You just want to confirm it was there.
I just wanted to confirm that that's what that was.
Sorry about that. I
Go
forgot
ahead.
that.
No, I just wanted to make sure. Thanks, sorry.
Okay. So the only addition, we will include July, discussion on July meeting, the July meeting date. Are there any other amendments? Changes? Is there a motion to approve the meeting agenda based on the recommended amendments?
Second.
All those in favor of approving today's agenda, raise your hand with an aye.
Aye.
All of those opposed? Any abstentions? Today's agenda has been approved, okay. All right. So we're gonna start off with OEHR update. Dante James?
Yes, ma'am. You're up.
You're up.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Nice to see a full house of people engaged and involved and listening as well. And welcome to our respective new commissions. I know both of your names very well, and I think I've mentioned many of you, I've mentioned. Thank God I would. My pleasure. Couple OEHR update, I guess. We are just moving forward toward the end of the fiscal year. As I think everyone is aware, Title VI and Title VII is moving over here. They are working on the ADA transition plan, which is a horrible name, but the feds gave it to us, so that's what we're stuck with. But it essentially means transitioning from non-compliance to compliance as it relates to ADA. And so the two folks moving over, one is Title II and Title VI, so she's responsible for more than just Title II, also the civil rights aspects of Title VI. But the assistant working with her is responsible for the ADA transition plan citywide. It's a limited term position, meaning it's funded essentially for 1 year. And so there's no way the city will become compliant in 1 year. But the idea is that there will be a plan put in place by which compliance will continue to roll out throughout till 2018. So that's the focus of that aspect. We're also going to focus on trying to become more visible in terms of Title VI awareness on behalf of the community. So the expectation is, if we're doing good work, we get more complaints, which is kind of counterintuitive. So initially, once people become much more aware of the work that can be done as it relates to Title VI complaints by residents and community, we would expect the complaints to spike some. Not necessarily because there are more issues of discrimination going on, but just because there's more awareness of the fact that you can in fact complain, and here's the process. So that's what we're looking at. It's not tracked very well currently, so we're going to look at putting in place a tracking system to do that and some other things, but becoming a little bit more proactive as it relates to Title VI. Budget, I think I had this, I don't remember what I said last time or if we knew. We did not, the office did not get approval for the staff person that we requested. We requested an additional staff person essentially to do assistance with administrative work as well as some program aspects as well. We didn't get it, so we still have one administrative person for our office to focus on being citywide and removing disparities across the city, so we'll keep working and doing what we can. So we'll meet Kenny, I guess, in just a minute. We have a new staff person, we're very pleased to confirm. This is day 3, so be kind. She's an ex-military policewoman, so she can take care of herself, so I'm not worried about it. So anyway, so that's where we are with that. This came across my desk yesterday, and I'm not going to read this whole thing, but I want to read a couple of these things as it relates to, I think, some of the work that the HRC is doing in regards to homelessness. And this is specific to homeless veterans. That the number of homeless Vietnam-era veterans, male and female, is greater than the number of soldiers who were killed during the war. The number of vets as of September 2009 anyway, was approximately 23 million. And on any given night, between 500,000 and 800,000 veterans are homeless. Approximately 33% of all homeless males in the United States are veterans. Veterans are twice as likely as other Americans to become chronically homeless. Veterans represent 11% of the adult civilian population, but 26% of the homeless population. This was in 2007. Some of the primary causes of homelessness among vets are lack of income due to limited education, lack of transferable skills from the military to civilian life, combat-related physical health issues and disabilities, substance abuse, weak social networks due to problems adjusting to civil life, civilian life, and just lack of service. I was speechless as I read this. And I just offer this, there's a whole lot more, and as you know, the Housing Bureau is doing quite a bit as it relates to trying to end homelessness as well. But I would just suggest that there may be something that the HRC can consider doing as it relates to homelessness, and specifically as it relates to homeless vets. Kenya had some thoughts on this as we were talking about this earlier this afternoon, about some things that are going to be happening in the upcoming year that may be able to be plugged into by the HRC, which I think may be helpful. So anyway, I don't know, I was just so struck by these numbers that I just wanted to share as it relates to some of the work that you're doing.
Forward that to us and to us.
I can, I absolutely can. What else? Any questions for me as I try to think of anything else? We are in the final stages of completing and getting ready to roll out the assessment to 7 pilot bureaus in the city that will do an assessment on equity for their bureaus. 2 will do a complete equity assessment and then put together an equity strategic plan. 5 of those bureaus are going to do components of the assessment, be it in personnel, be it in contracting, be it in community engagement, and assess their bureau internally on how it relates to how well it is doing across an equity spectrum. So that's one of the things that we are also working on. I think, you know, on our website is a demographic dashboard, which is the most up-to-date, the only up-to-date, real-time demographic snapshot of the work, the employees of the city of Plymouth. It's updated monthly, and starting next month, veteran status will also be attached to that. Right now, it's age, gender, race, age, gender, and race. We'll attach veteran status to that next month, and also looking at attaching disability status to that once HR completes some of its assessments and surveys. So we're still trying to work on transparency in the city, as well as working with the mayor's office to put together an equity initiative that will come out sometime in the spring. You know, I had this conversation with several folks, the mayor included, that some people have honestly complained that there's no overall equity initiative that the city has. And my answer was, 1, it's symbolic, and 2, I would much rather have some components in place that we're doing, that we're seeing make change, that I can then say, we're going to put this under the umbrella of the initiative versus have an initiative with nothing under it. So we are, and that's just my philosophy, you don't have to agree with it. But now we are looking at putting together what would be an equity initiative that everybody can kind of buy into and see all that we're doing. We'll bring in some folks that are going to help us strategize that, the mayor's office, my office, and you'll see sometime in the spring. Within the next 2 months, we're going to do a strategic planning session to do that and roll it out. So just kind of futuristic thinking about what we're doing. Stop talking, it's probably my 10 minutes.
Can I ask you a question? You mentioned last time that there was a program in Philadelphia, you sent me an email dealing with some anti-recidivism program hiring felons.
Yes.
Has anybody picked up on that?
Absolutely. I had, when I met with the mayor Monday, I once again presented it to him with some more documentation. And long story short, there's a Department of Labor has but it's essentially, it's a work opportunities tax credit program where you can get up as a business up to $2,000 tax credit if you hire a felon within 1 year of their release from incarceration. Philly has a tax program. That's the federal Department of Labor. Philadelphia has a tax program now where if you hire a felon with no time responsibilities within that, you get a $10,000 per year tax credit for hiring a felon, someone with a felony record. And so the mayor, who I think enjoys a little competitive edge with Philly, I'm a Mayor Leonard, absolutely wanted to know more. He was sitting there engaged, reading through this, talking about how can we attach it to this, how can we attach it to that. He asked me to, which I did yesterday, try to get some more information from Philly about, what were the challenges, what have been the successes, how has it been received, how many businesses have used it, how have you seen people being hired off of the program. So he wants that follow-up, which I'll get to him probably by Monday when I get more information from Philly. But it's, I think, absolutely going in the right direction.
You need some hands on board for that. Be in touch.
Okay.
For sure. I bet Emmanuel would be really into that idea, given his work experience.
Okay, no, that's
And
perfect.
I love the idea, so.
Okay. And one other thing, I think you've heard me talk about the ban the box concept, and that Portland essentially by process does that, because they don't ask you for anything until you move farther down and you're on an eligibility list, or you reach some level of final stages. But it still has the question on the job postings about, it's not even a question, it's a statement that says, you may be required to sign a criminal conviction statement to get this job. And I have always lobbied and said, to say that if you're going to leave that on there, there needs to be an affirmative statement saying conviction is not necessarily a detrimental or disqualifying factor for employment with the city. So what I'll tell you is, as of last week, the director of HR said they're just going to remove the statement altogether from job. So I think that's a huge win for the city and for folks who have criminal convictions, who are just intimidated, and it has a chilling effect on who applies for jobs with the city. So kudos to HR, to Director Anna Kenwood, for saying that she realizes now that that just does what it does, and is going to be removed from job postings. So, nice. Yeah.
There's an Urban League project that sounds like it's related to ban the box in the city, so.
It is for businesses.
Business
outside.
Oh, okay, I thought it was in. The other one is of the, is it 7 bureaus that are pilot testing? The equity assessment, is the police bureau one of them?
No. It was going to be, and then it's a really big ship. So we thought we would pilot it with a bureau that's not quite as,
a smaller
not
staff.
quite as complex.
Because I think their equity manager position is in the budget.
It is. Theirs is in the budget, they got approved, the mayor approved it. BDS's equity manager position has been approved, and they haven't posted it yet. Parks and Rec's equity manager position has been posted. The interviews, I think, I'm sitting on one of the interview panels, I think 2 weeks from now or next week, so that's rolling right along.
Any other questions for Doug? All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we'd like to take some time to introduce our new staff person, Ms. Kenya Budd, and the floor is yours.
My name is Kenya Budd, and I'm the new hire, I'm your new staff person. And I've come from the public sector doing private practice, mediation, facilitation, and equity and diversity training. I worked for Multnomah County for about 8 years, ago. So I'm very excited about working with this commission specifically because the HRC, well, human rights is something that I care a lot about personally. And I just am excited to see this commission develop and to watch you all move into the green as you do your time on the commission. Very excited about the 2 new incoming commissioners, and I'm very well supported with you guys as outgoing staff person. So, and I'm very open. So if you guys need to contact me, feel free. Call, come by, really come by, because I'd love to spend time with each of you. And I'll try to set something up as I get a little more settled in. Now I at least know where I'm supposed to be forward. In a couple of weeks, I'll be able to go a couple of blocks away, still find my way back. So Yeah, I really look forward to seeing you guys as individuals and working with you as a collective unit.
Welcome.
Welcome. And with that, I want to say thank you to Jeff for dealing with us. I know that this is part of his job, but I think we bring a unique set of expectations and experience that has probably fine-tuned his patience, to say the least. But we just really thank you for always being supportive of us and continuing to be a beacon of light for us as we continue to grow. And I also want to lend some time to introduce Shabri Vickers, and is it Nega? Okay, Rebecca Nega. I thought I was going to say something inappropriate. My mouth always tends to say something that's not supposed to be said. I just want to take some time to also introduce you all, give you a chance to say hello to everybody.
Hi everyone, I've met a couple of you. My name is Rebecca Nega. I currently work for the Oregon Health Authority and also Equity and Inclusion as a community engagement coordinator. I'm very, very excited to be hopefully on the AHRC and just looking forward to being on a couple committees and doing the work. Very happy to be here.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Shabri Vickers. Extremely excited to be here. I currently, as a profession, work as the Vice President of Brand Experience for Big Brothers Big Sisters. Human rights and the work there within and the work that you guys have done, spearheaded, not only excites me, but it's one of the reasons why I'm really absolutely engaged in the work that you guys have done, and really look forward to supporting that, and then hopefully eventually, as you guys have done, take the lead on some things and make some actual change. So thank you for welcoming Rebecca and I, and get to work.
Well, most of you already know this, but Shabri earned one of the first Human Rights Commission awards for during the first annual Human Rights Commission Awards.
She was actually the first person to the emerging leader. Welcome. Welcome, Rebecca.
So next on our agenda, I have City Council communications presentations.
So we talked a little bit about that at the last exec committee meeting, and I've been kind of reminding the commission that there is a spot of time during every city council meeting that it's called communications, and you get 2 minutes to, is it 3? 3 minutes. 3 minutes to give testimony, and it's a great opportunity for the Human Rights Commission to show up and just talk about what the important work you're doing. I think it's an opportunity that we should take advantage of, and so that's what came up at the executive meeting.
And I'll just add to that, we've decided that we are going to be taking advantage of that, not that we should be taking advantage of that.
Sorry, yeah.
And we have asked Jeff to put us on the agenda as quickly as we can.
Right, and I cannot do it apparently. Everyone has to sign themselves up. So there's an availability through the auditor's office. You have to get a hold of Carla or Sue.
So we can't have our program coordinator sign up the Human Rights Commission for that? It has to be an individual?
It has to be an individual.
Okay.
So I'm going to sign up for the first spot to do a follow-up from our work in East Portland, just to go back to those folks, say, here's what we heard, and we're going to actually circulate a list of recommendations. So I sort of have a wrap-up of the meeting already, but I think I want to carry it one step further about recommendations from what we heard.
And so these commission opportunities, communications opportunities happen every week, right? But we've decided at the executive committee that we think that it would be appropriate for us to appear once a month, or no less than once a month. We can go as much as we want, but we are going to propose that everybody on the commission is going to be expected to present to City Council at this communications opportunity on a rotating basis. And it's gonna happen every month, and so we're gonna put together a list, and we're gonna go down that list. And if somebody has a special opportunity that they want to present, they can get up in there and put themselves and trade spots with somebody, but one Human Rights Commissioner will be presenting to City Council every month at this thing. And it's gonna be part of the expectation of commissioners. So we're talking about expectations, and we're kind of taking the bull by the horns here, and we're gonna assign some. So Alan's gonna take the lead as I think is appropriate. If we're the ones that are saying that that's what we're gonna do, then we should be willing to do it first. And so I'll go second, unless somebody wants to go second, and I think we'll just go down the line from there.
Well, so we can speak outside of that time, though.
Oh, sure.
Because one of the issues that I've been meaning to talk to the city council about is the application process for the city. So that's how, it's as much an HRC issue as it is a personal issue for me, that the only way you can apply for a job is online.
Okay.
So, so it's something I want to do sooner rather than later, so we can discuss that. But, and I don't know how long that takes, but, you know, I want to basically just go in front of them and say that the process that they have now, in my opinion, excludes a lot of people, and that they need to, I think they need to find a different solution, maybe setting up kiosks in important buildings or at the city hall, or community centers that we have in the city, so that, you know, people can apply for jobs or accept paper applications, something. Accommodation.
Or if you'd like to do that in the communications segment, you could take the second spot after Alan does it this time, and be the next person to present it if you'd like.
Yeah.
So I'm just interested in some clarification, so that after you guys have worked it out, are these statements that will need to go through the process and get approval, and how do we map that? How do we let people know if they're interested, how that's gonna have to be mapped out?
Well, if you're speaking on behalf of the commission, then we have to go through the commission process. And so Alan had said that he's going to circulate his draft. So I think we need to follow the flow chart if we're going to be speaking on behalf of the commission.
And you'll be speaking on behalf of the commission, because that's the application.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we will just have to go through that process every month. And so if we're doing it monthly, we can just put it on the agenda. And it's something that we won't,
Exhibit A.
something that we won't have to really worry about if we just make it a regular course of business thing.
The other thing, we need to plan a little bit ahead, because there's only, I think, 5 communication spots, and they fill up.
They fill it very quickly.
Yeah.
There's a regular set of folks who tend to take those, so we want to try to get a routine going so that we can get signed up. I'm trying to, who are they? They're regular attendees of the council.
There are regular attendees, and then there are regular attendees. Just curious, who is it we're competing with for these spots?
Generally members of, the community or the public.
And by the way, also, in any partner groups that we work with, community organizations, it's a great time for them to, to encourage them to come out too, because you have you're the city, you're the city council, you have the media there, and it's 3 minutes, right? So any groups that you're working with that are working, or like-minded groups working on human rights, it would be good to encourage them to come out as well and sign up for these spots.
And council does love hearing folks in those communication spots.
And just one more thing, maybe you can help me with this, the scheduling of this, Jeff, but I think ideally we are tracking, or committees are tracking council agenda in terms of topic and content, and folks can do their communications based on that content. So can you let us know, can you remind us how that works, when that is posted? and
Well, the
how-
communications part isn't agenda specific.
Right, but does that,
And you can
wouldn't
test
it be helpful if it's provided in a theme that matches? I mean, if
Well,
council's making
the
this.
council agenda could really take on any number of things.
Right, but we know ahead of time, we can know ahead of time
you know, a week ahead of time,
Right.
maybe 2 weeks, but by the time you see the agenda, you're not gonna be able to sign up because they fill it very quickly.
You're gonna be able to sign up for the general communication spot.
Right.
There's, for most regular agenda items, there's a testimony period behind you. After each test, you can sign up for testimony. And I think that's maybe what you're talking about more.
Well, that's a separate thing, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
something.
You can sign up for that the day of the meeting.
So I guess what I'm saying is that could be an alternative for communicating. If somebody wants to testify that month and it looks
Specific.
like
Yeah.
they're able to catch that there's a theme that they wanted to refer to, they can also, or excuse me, instead testify after that.
Yeah, if you all want to decide that the expectation is that there's testimony no less than 1 month, you know, whether that's during communications or whether that's during, and that makes sense to me, but that would be up for you to figure out.
And we can talk about that, but this is just at our last meeting that we decided we've got to start doing this stuff. And so whether that takes one form or another,
Yeah.
as long as we're in front of council, I think that's great. And I think we can be flexible
More
about
the
how that happens. Yeah.
Thank you. So we have time now on the agenda for Enlace.
Thank you.
If we could have you, actually, come on up to the front here.
Is there room for 4 of us to be up there?
Oh, yeah, of course. Here,
Alright.
here, I'll get, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Keith. I want to take it.
Thank you all for having us today. My name is Jamie Trinkle. I work with Enlace, which convenes the National Private Prison Divestment Company, as well as a local coalition here in Portland that's asking the city of Portland to publicly divest from private prisons and their major investors. So first of all, I'll explain why divestment is important. The 2 largest private prison companies, Corrections Corporation of America and GEO Group, rely on financing from public institutions like the city of Portland to lobby for contracts and laws that disproportionately impact communities of color and that result in massive immigrant detention. And investors, like the city of Portland, share responsibility for CCA and GEO Group's efforts to create felons out of our community members and to create profits and dollar signs over the heads of our community members. Our coalition is a broad one, includes over a dozen organizations here in Portland, including the American Friends Service Community, CAUSA Oregon, Center for Intercultural Organizing, Enlace, the Interfaith Movement for Immigrant Justice, the National Lawyers Guild Lewis and Clark Chapter, Oregon Dream Activists, Partnership for Safety and Justice, Portland Association of Teachers, Portland Campaign to End the New Jim Crow, Portland Central America Solidarity Committee, Portland Job with Justice, Race Talks, Rural Organizing Project, SCIU 49, Urban League, and BOES. As you can see, this is an issue that's important to many Portlanders and many different facets of the Portland community. Private prisons and their shareholders are dependent on putting our community members behind bars for longer periods of time. The better, the more profits they make. In the 1990s, their efforts to lobby focused on longer sentencing laws, which decimated Black and brown communities across the country. Through their participation in ALEC, they got forward truth in sentencing laws, mandatory minimums, and 3 strikes laws. Since in the 2000s, they focused mainly on immigration as their biggest growth market. And since 2004, their lobbying money doubled, basically. They've spent $45 million on lobbying and campaign contributions on our federal government in the last decade, and it's been enormously successful. In that time, they've gotten an immigrant detention bed mandate, so that 34,000 immigrants are mandated by Congress to be detained each night. The Secure Communities Program roped up hundreds of thousands of immigrants to the point where we had record-breaking months of deportations and detention and deportations in 2012 and 2013. And we also now see an increase in criminal prosecutions. The leading federal prosecution now is for illegal entry and illegal re-entry, so that now more than half of people entering federal prison are Latino.
And they're held there for between 30 days and up to 20 years for the crimes of illegal entry and illegal reentry. This has led to more than $20 billion in profits for the private prison industry in that time. The impact on the Portland community is huge. Nearly 4,000 immigrants are picked up each year in Portland, and all of those that are held for over 12 hours are immediately shipped up to a private prison in Tacoma. That's the Geo Group's Northwest Detention Center, which you may have heard of recently in the news when detainees there went on hunger strike for over 2 months to protest the abysmal conditions inside, continued deportations, and their ironic forced use of labor. They're paid $1 a day. Usually they're picked up because they're not legally in the country and can't legally work, but then they're put into an immigrant detention center and forced to work for $1 a day. All of that is so the GO can make a profit. And financially, our city is directly tied to private prisons. We have $73 million of city money invested in major private prison investors. These major investors are Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, and the Bank of New York Mellon. This may seem like an attenuated connection, but I can assure you it's not. Wells Fargo has been a major supporter of private prisons. They have extended nearly $1 billion in credit to the biggest private prison company in the U.S., CCA. JP Morgan Chase has shared lobbyists with Corrections Corporation of America just last year. These lobbyists were engaged in lobbying around comprehensive immigration reform, as well as appropriations bill spending for increased immigration enforcement and other things like that. And they've also been active as shareholders and have made the private prison industry worse and less accountable to the public. So they've voted against acts that would increase access to like lobbying information, how CCA and GO actually lobby, and shut down resolutions that would have actually created some sort of recourse for folks that are sexually assaulted within these private prison facilities. So today we're here to ask that the Human Rights Commission write a letter to the City of Portland in support of our efforts, calling for them to divest from private prisons and major investors. We have a draft resolution that I believe you all have in your packets today that we've written up, and that we would like the city to move on. And so Isabel, speak next, and we'll share them.
I do have copies. I'm sorry, I didn't know how many people were on the commission, so I don't have enough for everyone, but there's like 8 or 9, slightly amended. Good afternoon. I am representing an action group of First Unitarian Church in Portland. The group is called Ending the New Jim Crow, Healing the Justice System Action Group. It's a long name because it's a big issue. Our mission is to end the mass incarceration of millions of people, both citizens and non-citizens, in this country. Over the last 35 years, these people have been the victims of a web of federal laws, biased policing, and court decisions that have decimated communities of color. They've also decimated individual families who are white, but our focus is on how it has been disproportionately affecting communities of color and individuals of color. Portland residents are unfortunately well represented in this population. I have chosen to use my time to go to the source of our national discussion on the injustice of mass incarceration, Michelle Alexander. In the New Jim Crow, Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness, she writes, there is also the private sector investment to consider. Prisons are big business and have become deeply entrenched in America's economic and political system. Rich and powerful people, including the former Vice President Dick Cheney, have invested millions in private prisons. They are deeply interested in expanding the market, increasing the supply of prisoners, not eliminating the pool of people who can be held captive for a profit. The 2005 annual report for the Corrections Corporation of America explained the vested interests of private prisons matter-of-factly in a filing with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Our growth is generally dependent upon our ability to obtain new contracts to develop and manage new correctional and detention facilities. This possible growth depends on a number of factors we cannot control, including crime rates and sentencing patterns in various jurisdictions and acceptance of privatization. The demand for our facilities and services could be adversely affected by the relaxation of enforcement efforts, leniency in conviction and enforcement practices, or through the decriminalization of certain activities that are currently proscribed by our criminal laws. For instance, any changes with respect to drugs and controlled substances or illegal immigration could affect the number of persons arrested, convicted, and sentenced, thereby potentially reducing demand for correctional facilities to house them. That's pages 230 and 231 in Alexander's book. They're not just kind of backing into this. They're really, really doing it on purpose. Nothing could slow the growth of the private prison industry more quickly than simply divesting in those companies. We know it works. No money, no lobbying. No lobbying, no stopping the movement, and it is a movement to end mass incarceration. I just saw Bell the other night. We're doing the same stuff. We just don't throw people overboard from slave ships that are designed not to be able to hold them and not stopping for 8 port cities to get water and then saying they had to get thrown overboard so that that company could get the insurance money. We're not doing anything quite that exotically flagrant, but we're doing it just the same, yet again. Respectfully submitted.
Sarah Sweatsup will also testify.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm with the Student Union at Portland State University, which currently represents about 1,000 students, but I feel pretty confident today speaking on behalf of the vast majority of Portland State University students. This year, as a journalist communicating with many different groups, I encountered so much interest in following the money and divesting from private prisons that I reached out to Enlace to find out more about their campaign work so that I could connect students with those resources. So on such short notice of this meeting, I wasn't able to do an official poll of all the student groups that I'm in touch with or that may be interested, but I would say just from my experience this year as a student, it's difficult to know where to even start summarizing the obvious student support for divestment from the private prison industry and the problems of mandatory incarceration legislation. It's so prevalent that it feels like it's practically unanimous on campus. All 3 slates that recently ran for student government brought up the connection with declining university funding, that connection with mandatory sentencing and the money that's been drained away from the university system since the early 90s. One slate specifically highlighted the prison pipeline, and that was a cornerstone of their conversations with students and their presence in the park blocks, publicly campaigning. And that group had the official sponsorship of United Indian Students in Higher Education. The indigenous population of this region is very much affected by incarceration policies. Pam Campos, who is our student trustee on the new board of trustees, is an outspoken advocate for the rights of undocumented people in the United States. And she has also talked about incarceration policy and highlighted Oregon's support of the private prison industry and sending undocumented people to the Northwest Detention Center. So since the contract negotiations this year, students are talking a lot more about money, and they're noticing that the reason why we don't have as much money from the universities as we could is because of incarceration policy. For example, when we had a panel organized by Jobs with Justice, we heard Gabby Williamson, Representative Gabby Williamson, talked about our budget issues. So I think, if you were to poll any student on campus and any student who's even marginally politically involved on campus and poll them on their
thoughts on this issue, it would be one of the first things that they would mention to you. Like Michelle Alexander's book is like quickly becoming like a Bible to the activists of our generation. You know, like this is really kind of common knowledge stuff, and the student body hopes to, I think, submit a resolution for the university to divest this coming year. So we hope to follow in the footsteps of the city.
Hi, my name is Crystal Contreras. I'm a board member of the Portland Central America Solidarity Committee. Since 1979, our group has worked with people throughout the Americas, organizing against the harmful effects that the United States government continues to have abroad. U.S. economic and interventionist policy is one of the root causes of immigration, forcing people to leave their countries in order to look for opportunities and safety here in the United States. Then, once they arrive, they are subjected to oppressive policing tactics that are done in the name of public safety, when studies have shown that there is no connection between high levels of immigration and high levels of crime. My own family has experienced these brutal police methods because in May of 2010, the police conducted a raid at my aunt's home, bursting in when my 12-year-old cousin was playing video games after school. They made him lay face down on the floor of the living room with a gun to his head while they ripped through the house, tearing open mattresses and destroying the wealth that my aunt has worked so hard to build since she came here from Mexico. And even though this happened in a town about 8 hours south of here, that's not too far from where we are now, and these things are happening everywhere. It seems like this has become normal now thanks to the war on drugs, which is fueled by private prison companies and their need to fill quotas. Because these companies have pushed for harsher sentencing and criminalization, police forces are using these policies to justify their use of military weapons and tactics, which terrorizes people instead of keeping them safe. Divesting from Wells Fargo would weaken the hold that private prisons have in our communities, creating environments free from the threat of a militarized police force. Portland is rated one of the most livable cities in the nation and sets a standard and a model for other urban centers to aspire to. Taking the lead on divestment from private prisons will show the world that in order for a city to be truly livable, it must consider human rights at all levels of its operations.
Any questions?
What is, are you working on a timeline, or do you have any deadlines coming up?
Well, we would like a letter as soon as possible, if that is possible, from the Human Rights Commission. We've been in conversation with the City Council for over, I believe, a year now, and have been trying to move this forward. It's gotten a little bit waylaid by the Commissioner Novick passed the Do Not Buy alert thing last October, and then unfortunately that has led to a kind of long bureaucratic process, which the city is saying, oh, now we've got a process in place, please, just fit within that, wait till we finally have a committee set up that you can make an ask of that too. A committee doesn't exist yet. We're looking for a letter would be helpful either in showing that future committee, this is an important issue to the Human Rights Commission and obviously, and then also if we continue with our process in City Council.
Do you have any specific commissioners that you've been in touch with at City Council, or are you working with?
We've mainly focused on Commissioner Novick.
Novick,
Can I just clarify that year-long conversation was regarding specifically this resolution or something like this?
Something like it. This resolution is informed by more recent conversations with the Treasury Department, and so that it's something that would actually be implementable.
Can I ask one more follow-up? I know you're reading, but so I noticed that your asks are kind of twofold. I see the portfolio screen and a couple of other requests in relation to that, and then there's an advocacy request. So part of that assessment you've done and come to it, I'm thinking it sounds like, is that both of those things at once are attainable right now?
Yes.
I have a question about the numbers that you talked about and the numbers that you have in here regarding the city's actual investment.
Mm-hmm.
So when you talk about the city currently owns about 65 million private business investor securities, and you mentioned a number that was 73 million. So, is your information based on public information based on the city's portfolio then?
Yes.
These private prisons that exist, are they counties, run by the county, are they the county, the city, the state?
So the immigrant detention centers that are private are all contracted with the federal government, and some of those are actually contracted with, enter into intergovernmental agreements with the city so that they can avoid going through federal processes like FEPA and other things like that, so they can kind of avoid federal regulation. Those are all contracted directly with federal agencies. And then we don't have any private prisons within Oregon, thankfully. But then if we look to California, they have a lot of private prisons that contract directly with the state. And then they're also looking, what's going on in California. Another area of private prison expansion might be contracted with county jails as they try and push inmates out of state facilities, state prisons under a Supreme Court order, and so they'll just shift them into, instead of releasing these people, they'll just shift them into county jails if they can get prison contracts.
So have you thought about that approach in the city, about engaging in that kind of practice here, or creating private prisons here in Portland?
I think we're safe for private prisons here. AFSCME has done a really incredible job within the state of Oregon to make sure that private prisons don't come into the state because they're horrible for their workers.
I would just one last thing, just suggest that you kind of keep that in your thoughts. Because I used to work in the jails, I was a corrections deputy for 6 years, and when I was there, privatization was a big topic. And so I'm sure it's still out there. And I would hate to see that happen here in Oregon, so.
Any last questions before we wrap? Is there a motion for action at this time?
I think it would be appropriate to assign an action minutes, so you might ask for a volunteer.
Anyone specifically would like to serve as the action lead for this? People? Okay.
So Kate's going to be your contact on the Human Rights Commission, and so if you have any contact information, then you should give it to Kate. And then what we will do is determine as a commission whether or not we're going to be able to do what you're asking and the time frame to do that. So it could happen anytime between now and our next meeting, or it could happen just right after our next meeting.
Are we asking for a specific motion, also gives some direction on, because what I heard was a letter directly to city council of support for the effort?
Support for the effort or specifically support for the letter resolution?
Yeah, support for what they're.
Let's vote.
Can
The
I-
letter and the endorsement.
Aussie is doing.
Sorry, I think it might carry more weight to reference the resolution, but also to extend beyond that in case this comes into question, so that we still are advocating in support if we're able to do that.
Yep. So if you feel that's appropriate, then
Are you going to make the motion?
I make the motion that Kate Laura is the action lead for creating a letter of support for Enlace's effort to bring forward the city council this draft ordinance and to support their efforts in helping ensure the city of Portland is divested from the private prison complex.
second.
I have a question. Is it entirely in Los Angeles?
No.
I didn't think so. So I heard.
Is the lead group?
Coalition.
We're the lead, yes, we're the lead group.
The coalition led by Enlace.
So I move for Alan's motion as amended to move forward for election.
All of those in favor?
Aye.
All of those opposed? Any abstentions?
David,
Are you
going to
voting?
vote, or?
Oh, okay. All
Okay.
right, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
So moving on strategy. At our last executive committee meeting, we had a discussion which we somewhat covered in our pre-meeting today about focus. And three of the areas that we've chosen as your leaders of the executive committee to focus on are obviously already areas that we have a central concentration on. And those three areas are community and police relations, / accountability, immigrant rights, and housing rights. And specifically focusing in on the shared services that CDC, communications, and policy provide to all of those issues. I think the challenge that we've had is we've been approached, in many instances, approached by a lot of organizations. We see things in the news and oftentimes pull us in many different directions. But the challenge for us going forward is maintaining our focus. And so those are the three areas that we are going to focus on. That does not mean that we, in certain cases, as we are consistently approached from the community, or as we learn things, that there may be opportunity for endorsement of issues, but what we are going to be investing our energy, our work, our time is into helping raise the awareness and our DAVE, so discovery, advocacy, visibility, and education, around those three focus areas.
Can you say what they are again?
Discovery, advocacy.
The three areas.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right. I was like, I know that piece.
Oh, I was like, give me credit. Community and police relations, / accountability, immigrant rights, and housing rights.
Thank you.
Yes.
So, when you say CPRC, you're talking about accountability, you're talking about CPRC and the new. I see it separate.
Yeah.
They are.
We're not saying that.
We're not combining them.
Okay.
We just kind of, if we had to arrange them into an order, they would be next to one another, but not necessarily the same. We understand that.
Okay.
So we're not, by stating that, we're not saying that community and police relations is now part of accountability. No. Those are the core areas within police relations that we want to focus on. So, LRCOM.
And just for Kenya, what is that again?
The law enforcement
Review committee.
review, that's what it is.
And they're calling it LRCOM?
LRCOM. They didn't want to call it LRC.
Why not?
So when we were talking about this, these are all areas that our task forces and committees are already focusing on. We've got our police relations and accountability, 2 different committees working on that. We've got our human trafficking task force, which is working on, is really an immigration, has a lot to do with immigration law. We've got housing rights task force. So what we're trying to do is focus, is trying to get, because we had this discussion where at our last meeting, there were a lot of new proposals coming in, and to go along with what we were talking about earlier, we think that it is important for us to get the work done that we are focusing on currently before we start taking on new stuff. We think that the best way to do that is to maintain our focus on those core areas. Doesn't mean we can't do other things, but we were talking about trying to filter the work that comes to us, because we can't do everything. And so we were talking about trying to filter the work that comes to us through that lens, and saying, how is this project, how is this ask going to fit within our agenda that we're trying to work with currently? And of course, this is something that is like the beginnings of this plan, but that's where we were coming from with this, and we felt like as the executive committee, it was appropriate to just try to set a path, because it is our job to set the agenda, and so that's what we were thinking. So that's where that came from, just as a background.
I think there are a number of us who, I know I've spoken with Amy a number of times more casually about the need for core focus.
areas with regards to this work because of the capacity concerns and everything else. So this is reflective of something I've been hoping for a couple of years. Not the exact focus, I'm very happy with what we are working on, but just that we have 3 to 5 areas, since we've built our capacity programmatically, that we have those 3 to 5 focus areas, because I've seen a lot of other bodies do something like that and be more effective. You can screen things that come to you and see, well, that's really important, we get the value, but can we do it? Because we have this. I just had a question about how often we will revisit the focus. And if we have new members come on and maybe there's a lot of energy, and I think Kate mentioned this sort of decision screen of like, are there at least X number of people who are interested in this before we create something new? Sort of how often we'll review these 3 areas, or if it's always gonna be 3 areas, or sort of what the thoughts are there with new membership coming on.
I think what is within our current capacity is to definitely give precedence to what seems to be leading the pack. And specifically, I think we've heard a lot about community policing and the prevalence of, and the relation of the DOJ settlement right now. I think there are a lot of working parts to that we have not even launched into quite yet. So, and depending on what happens with it, there's going to be a response expected of the Human Rights Commission on either side. So I think those things, to answer your question, are going to naturally line up. And I think they are lining up, so perhaps spending more conversation with those committee chairs and saying, okay, this is what's going on. How do you all feel about the motion that we're taking these 4 areas? What were you going to say, Alan?
I think, you asked time, I think we should review it annually. I think we have a strategic plan that's guided us over 3 to 5 years, and that we should look at our actual work plan each year. And these are the things that we're working on right now, and I think that's why they came up, because they're things we're presently working on. So if we say these are and that's where I find it very useful, is when somebody says to me, you're a member of the Human Rights Committee, what are you guys working on? Well, now it's very easy to have an elevator speech that says, well, here are the 3 things we're actually working on.
And are you asking, as far as the accountability piece, how often are we going to revisit that, or?
No, actually, I think what you just said, I was just curious, because I've actually staffed bodies where we've picked focus areas, and then new people sometimes will come on with all this energy, and there will always be questions about, well, what if we want to create, or have a 4th group or focus area or whatever. And so I was just curious, and I'm comfortable reviewing it annually. And if there's a lot of energy continuing moving forward, why not?
And I think we should calendar it just like we do with the new chair. This is the month that we review our annual work plan. Maybe the 3 don't change, or maybe they do.
So about annually, a lot of the things that we do annually, like whether it's this or public meeting month or whatever, I think that we could just do that all during orientation, and then orientations will be probably like biannually or something like that. And then the new commissioners are definitely going to get the information, and so and everybody will be reviewing it because we'll probably all be public this orientation right there. But I have one question. So I love these 3 focuses that we have. I think that they a lot of things would fit into them. But what would something like bring our war dollars go into?
Well, we're not saying that we can't address emerging issues in community concerns. That's not the intent. If somebody has a resolution, they can hand it to us and say, or come and ask for a letter. I mean, I would put this in the immigration category, but and just wants a letter, we can do that. We can have a person write a letter or endorse a resolution that is tangential to our main core areas. But I think that when it comes to putting our resources, our budget, and our long-term strategic planning into certain areas, that's kind of more what we're talking about.
So my comment is more regarding process, and I sincerely appreciate the leadership and the call for this. As you heard, I've been talking with Ashley about the need for this. And what I want to which is also a sustainability suggestion, is that those kind of decisions, and if at all possible, come as a result of conversation with all of the commission. And, you know, what I also hear is that you guys are reflecting what you're seeing that is going on. But at the same time, I think it's still helpful in terms of us having an ability to own what those three are, and having it more likely that we're all going to be on board would be helpful, you know, as we move forward to co-create those.
All right.
Go ahead.
Partially, like, the reason why I agree is because, like, the community and police relations, for instance, I think that it's a great focus, but then it's like / accountability, whereas like the LRCOM committee, it focuses on all law enforcement. And so like this issue would have definitely fit within that committee's work. And so like, I think that, I don't know how exactly I'm structuring this, but basically what Amy's saying is that if we all had a way to create what these focuses and names were going to be, it would probably bring some accountability.
And they don't have names.
Oh.
This is our telling you what we talked about at the executive committee meeting and what we think is the best way to move forward. So if there are, I mean, this is not something that is in the bylaws or written in stone or anything like that. It's, we as the executive committee and trying to take on a leadership role, think this is the direction that we should go, and that's what we're suggesting. So if you guys want to, if there are names that can be attached, if that's what you like, that's fine.
And Alan said he could provide a cool acronym if anyone wants to form a task force to create an
Or
acronym.
it could be, yeah, Housing Integration of Police /
It's our hit campaign.
You have an acronym committee, don't we?
We should have an acronym.
Well, it's the ACA, Committee Association.
Okay. Any other questions, concerns about?
I have
Yes.
one other, just the trafficking piece, the immigration rights / trafficking or trafficking fitting within that. I know that some of the conversations Kyle and perhaps other members of your group had earlier on was the need to focus domestically. And so I just want to be clear about that when we are fine-tuning how we're communicating our focus. It doesn't seem like, again, we're focusing on, you know, non-domestic issues of trafficking because there's such a huge need there.
Oh yeah, no, we're not giving that part of the HTTF up.
Okay.
We're just, like I said, this is flexible.
Yeah.
But we're trying to focus on as new things come in, we're trying to filter them through this lens. I think pretty much our entire legislative agenda at the HTTF, it revolves around domestic trafficking. And so,
Okay.
no, I don't think anybody that could see what we're doing there would mistake that.
All right. Moving on to committee, task force, and liaison reports, starting with Community Discovery Committee.
Do you want to do that as part of the fall roundtable
Yes.
update? Would that be better?
Okay, so you're gonna move that to fall round?
Because I think that's essentially the CDC update.
CDC is working on the roundtable.
Okay,
Public policy?
No update today.
okay. CPRC?
Yeah, right, okay, so.
Where to start? I'll start and then you can add.
Okay.
So it has been discussed, I met with, I talked to Alan and I talked to David, spoke with Maria Lisa, spoke with Assistant Chief O'Day about me serving as the chair for the CPRC. So at the next meeting, I would assume we will vote on that. So it's not for sure, but that's where we're at now, is that I've been nominated or, put through the vetting process to be the chair of the CPRC. So I've had some good discussions with, like I said, those individuals and expressed that I'm willing to do that, but, I want to make sure that I have the support of the committee that is currently there, Assistant Chief, Maria Lisa, Damon, Alan, and, because, you know, there's a learning curve that goes with that, and that we're all on the same page. So that will happen hopefully at the next meeting. So that's one. Correct?
Yeah, I'm just not sure about process either. I guess we should take it to CPRC later this month in June and have a discussion there, and then we'll bring a recommendation from CPRC here as opposed to doing it today. But I think that's the direction that we're headed right now. Are you planning to lead the meeting at the end of this month then, do you know?
No.
No, okay.
I understand what David is.
Damon is again? Oh, that's excellent, because Damon is very good at it.
Thank you for your willingness to do that.
Thank you.
Okay, so that'll be the process. We will have that discussion at CPRC at our June meeting, and then we'll come back in July and do that nomination.
And is there anything else?
Yeah, the other thing that happened this morning is that David and I were part of a group that presented to City Council as the follow-up to the COPS grant for the Police Bureau. So Dane, myself, Emma Cavelli, Maria Lisa Johnson, who is a community member of CPRC, and Damon provided our support for council receiving the COPS grant, which will help support the training program that has been developed by the Community Police Relations Committee around institutional racism in the police bureau. So it's a $50,000 grant that will help do some evaluation of the program and actually evaluation of organizational equity efforts at the Bureau overall, as well as supporting a consultant position, which will not be Damon. That was one of the original hangups in the grant being accepted previously. That will help us move forward the planning of the training project that we've been working on. It's been stalled because the Bureau member who had been helping staff us was reassigned, and so we haven't been able to move that project forward. So the hope is that with this grant, that will help move those pieces forward and help us further solidify a strategic equity plan at the organizational level of the Bureau. So that's the work that's being done at the subcommittee of CPRC, which is a subcommittee of this commission. It's a lot of layers.
Moving on to police accountability.
So, this,
You guys do that.
Look how this sounds perfect.
We can't spend this much time laughing at you.
Go ahead, call it two. So,
There you go.
the committee so far has, we've created our mission. It's still a new committee, so that's been our main focus of trying to really gather what our purpose is and our mission, as well as we kind of mapped out a few different partners and bureau contacts that we could be in touch with. Our next meeting, we probably will be going over those contact lists, expanding them, look at what issues exist out there in the community, and dive into contacts through that way, or through those avenues. And there is a lot to be involved with in this committee, so if new commissioners are involved or interested in what this committee would be doing, then get in touch with us after the meeting so that we can set up a time that would work for you. So
If you had a better name, that would be such a more attractive offer.
it's called a Law Enforcement Review Committee, so focusing on all law enforcement issues outside of community police relations.
Awesome. So this might be a good opportunity to touch base on the action we took after last month's meeting on the 9-year-old arrest.
Oh, yeah.
As a debrief, and so I know you worked on that, Sonji, and I did a little bit as well. And I can speak really briefly about the DOJ fairness hearing update, the DOJ process update. You want to go ahead with?
Sure, so we, I think at the last meeting it came up about the young lady who was arrested, and the action was put on the table, a request for action was put on the table that we send a letter to the editor expressing our disdain about what happened. And I believe Kate led the action along with Amy. And I offered it up for anyone else who wanted to jump on board, but Kate and I co-signed a letter that was sent to the editor. And that was that.
And so that went to, just specifically to the Oregonian?
Yes.
Okay. And I left that meeting early to go to the CRC meeting because they were hearing from the mom of the 9-year-old. They were presenting a conversation with the police bureau and the mom, as well as youth justice advocates. And one of our intentions or hopes was that we would meet with mom. I wasn't able to meet with mom, but I met with grandma, who was present there that night. And basically the police bureau, I think we had mentioned, had, by the time we had met last month, had posted on their webpage an inquiry from the community for their input on what that policy, how that policy should read. There was a representative from the police bureau at CRC that night discussing the work group that they're forming. And at that time, CRC was strongly recommended that that work group include bodies, including volunteer bodies. The HRC commission was mentioned as part of that police bureau work group. Of course, I wanted to jump up off my chair and say, we're on it, we're interested, but didn't. But I did share with those CRC members that we would likely be interested. And then I've since met with Irene Konem, who does outreach for CRC, indicating, yeah, there would be interest, because CRC is also interested in forming a work group to address juvenile policy. So that's in the works. If anybody is interested in those kind of actions as continued follow-up, let me know. I'll look you in. Not sure what will happen of it, but that's what I've done.
Can I try to add on to that, Amy? So actually, the CRC came to the CPRC meeting last month and asked us, so I'm not exactly sure what the ask is, but I think it's around developing a relationship specifically related to the review of the proposed change in those directives. So I'm actually on a CPRC subcommittee that is, I actually have the directives and the proposed draft of directives from the city attorney's office for those. And so that may come up through CPRC. So we'll keep in communication about that if there's other interest. So I don't know if CPRC is going to, I think we're waiting to review the draft. Public comments are due by the 7th.
Yes.
Or if you wanted to, you can go on the police bureau website and provide open public comment on the directives that the Bureau has around juvenile custody.
One of the things that was mentioned during CRC was the request that the police bureau make that feedback public.
Oh.
I'm just going to throw that out there because I think it's also a very good idea.
Yeah, I don't know what the process is, but it's.
So making the feedback that the public submitted through that process available and visible to you. Anything else or comment? Thank you again for your leadership on that.
Thank you, and thanks for sending that letter.
Thank you, Gina. Oh, yeah, no problem, thank you all. Moving on to nominating committee.
Oh, it's me again?
Sam!
Red.
Right now you have shifted into the red.
So I'm Sam, chair of the nominating committee, and I will have a press release shortly. Just kidding. I want to welcome, again, welcome Shabri and Rebecca. And it's the first opportunity I've had as the chair to go through this process and interview people and select. And I just want to thank everybody on the committee for their help and making this happen. And Jeff, especially, can't say enough wonderful things about Jeff and his guidance. And really, just can't say enough. So, but he's been invaluable. So I really appreciate his help and Alan and Gallo and everybody on the committee. And so I feel, I feel very good about the selections, and I'm very excited about what they bring to the HRC. And can you two say a little bit more about, maybe something else other than what you've already said to the committee? Maybe your expectations, or a little bit about yourself that you have about your work experience or life experience. What, I think in the interview is one of the questions was, what's your passion? What brought you to this place?
What experiences?
Okay. I mean, I would say broadly, anything related to human rights and equity for all communities is really kind of my driving passion through professionally and personally, and all the different organizations that I volunteer or connected with. And I would say what led me here, I have a lot of political organizing background, community organizing background, in a lot of organizations in Portland that I've been lucky to be part of, and that's kind of big, I guess. But I'm really, really excited to be part of the commission and kind of bring my background and my community connections and just collaborate with everyone and like everyone said, actually do work.
Shabri Vickers again, and I holistically agree with what Rebecca said. I think one of the things that I'm really excited about and that I mentioned during my interview was that I believe that Portland has the capacity to do a lot of work and then be kind of a beacon and shine a light to other cities, other groups around the work that we're doing. Portland is uniquely positioned to do a lot of things, has done a lot of things, and people consistently look to Portland for those things. So I look forward to being a part of that action. Human rights for me, from a passion perspective, I believe we all have different gifts, and hopefully one of my gifts is speaking up for those who maybe are unaware of what their voice can bring to the table, and hopefully engaging them in empowering that voice or helping to be that voice at a table such as this, and just working with other passionate people. I mean, many of you I know in the community or will get to know because of other work that you do that maybe is not connected to HRC, so I look forward to being a part of that. And you guys are powerful people, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. So thank you, Sam.
Thank you. Do you guys have any questions, or?
So I think we might need a formal motion, actually,
Oh,
to
yeah.
recommend.
Yeah.
You get it.
Yeah, so I would like to formally make a motion to appoint Shabri Vickers and Rebecca, say it for me? Nega as new human rights commissioners.
I'll just amend that to say that we will recommend the appointment of Rebecca and Shabri to the City Council for their approval.
You might further amend it to indicate which.
This is how they break in.
To indicate which class they're in, which is, I believe, the classes in 2014.
Yes, so their terms will end in October.
They're replacing Myra and Anita.
Yeah, right.
And they will be up for reappointment immediately.
Right.
And we'll still be able to serve 2 consecutive 3-year
Yeah, if you
terms.
decide.
So as amended, I so move.
All of it?
Got all that?
I did not get the amendment.
I'll make the motion.
Fantastic.
And can next time, can you be like a 2-card to repo?
That'll be an
I
organization.
move.
Okay.
No, actually, I think you need to make the motion because you're the chair of the nominating committee.
Or the committee.
I just forgot.
Okay, so Sam, you're going to move
I'm going to move
to recommend.
to recommend
Then Shabri Vickers
Shabri Vickers
and Rebecca Nega
are
Recommended council.
recommended to.
well, you're recommending that they are, that council approve them for
Council
appointment.
for appointment to the HRC for class of 2014.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Opposition? Abstentions? Welcome aboard, ladies.
So then what will happen next is we'll put the paperwork in for council to go forward on their consent agendas to vote for that, and then you don't need to be present for that because it's not a big ceremony or anything at City Council. And then we'll, once that happens, we'll schedule you to go to the auditor's office to swear in, and then you'll be able to vote and play all the fun HRC games.
There's a
Congratulations,
quick,
you guys.
thank you ladies so much, we're happy to have you. So there's a quick adjustment. Kyle has to pick up his baby. And we're gonna, if it's okay with the Housing Rights Task Force, to move him up. Go ahead.
Thank you. So Human Trafficking Task Force is in the process of getting some promotional material done, and that's going to take the form of some pamphlets that we're going to be able to hand out, and a public service announcement that we're going to be working with Univision on, and so that's very exciting. So Jeff's going to be helping us out with that, and I volunteered you, Jeff, by the way, to be the talent. The voice talent, so. Yeah, I hope your Spanish is excellent. So, but one thing I also wanted to mention is that we are tabling at the, and I'm going to just roll the Latino Health Equity Conference into this. We are tabling at the Latino Health Equity Conference on June 13th. That's Friday. That's a week from Friday, and I'm going to be tabling on behalf of the Trafficking Task Force, but I won't be there all day. And we do have one ticket for the entire day of the conference for an HRC member if they are interested in doing it, or a prospective HRC member. If either of the two of you would like to do it, that would be great too. I wish I could take it, but I just can't do it all day. So if anybody is interested in going to that event, it's a cool event. Please just get in touch with me. Is anybody right now thinking that that's something they would want to do? Okay, if not, that's fine, but if somebody is interested, please let me know by the end of the day tomorrow, because I'm going to give it to Irene Konev so that she can get somebody from her group to go. If nobody from, actually, I'll also open it up to the office, anybody at the office back with me, because we're the ones paying for it. So if anybody from the office wants to go too, that would be awesome.
Great.
So let me know if anybody wants to do that, and I think that's it. Human Trafficking Task Force is also going to be doing another legal services outreach event in August.
Oh, awesome.
And that's going to be our next. What's that?
What part of town?
We're going to do it south of town. Yep. So I will be giving a more comprehensive update of that next month. All right, I gotta go pick up the baby.
Yeah.
Okay, see ya.
We lost a couple people. Do you happen to know, would you prefer not to meet on July 2nd?
Oh, I'm sorry. I can meet on July 2nd. I'm gonna be around, so that's fine.
We're gonna ask that question later. I just want to get here.
Do you need me to be here to vote? I don't think so. Get set. I don't care. I'll do it. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Housing Rights Task Force? Oh, go ahead. Did you have a question?
So Kyle, you said you guys had an event in August? Okay. So there's like a public meeting, I remember we talked about this like 3 times, but could there maybe be some other type of calendar on the website that has all HRC stuff? Because I know that we can't do that or something like that.
Yeah, no, we've discussed that at length.
Yeah.
So yeah, as soon as,
I think, Damon, you created
have
one for us.
Yeah, we have one, but we're not supposed to have.
oh, really? You have the calendar?
Well, I haven't put anything on it.
Come on, confidence. I just have to talk to Kyle real quick, but
Okay.
whatever the website. What do we come up with?
I think we can have it.
We have a
I think
calendar.
other bureaus might have events calendars on their page. We might be able to investigate whether or not that's a technology that we could use. So it would be a public calendar. And so,
Yeah.
What was the reason why we couldn't have one?
Remember there was something about public meeting laws
There was
that we
something.
can't have.
we can't have a Google group and a Google calendar.
Oh, but we can have one on the webpage.
On the web, yeah, because it would be public.
Okay.
I don't care where it is.
I know, exactly.
Just
I don't
need
care where.
And I think I've seen other bureaus that have events calendars.
Yeah, you can embed a Google Calendar onto the website.
Well, that's onto a website, yeah.
Right.
The city website, that's the other question.
Right.
What can actually be done?
We can also have events or calendars or events from other partners.
Yeah,
Might have
that'd be
things
nice.
going on adjacent to your campus.
The city has a calendar, right. The city has a calendar because I saw Moni's.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, only has that. anything technologically is possible.
We'll figure that out for you, Deanna. Promise. Okay.
Yeah, I asked for it last time, so I'm excited.
Housing rights.
Housing Rights Task Force, we'll say part of it for the fall roundtable, but the other big Housing Rights Task Force piece that's happening is our sponsorship of the bus tour of discrimination to the Fair Housing Council of Oregon in partnership with Race Talks. So we are set for the tour to be on Friday, July 11th, and Saturday, July 12th. Okay? And so there are about between 42 and 48 seats per bus. Race Talks is working to register people. We've asked them to save us some seats, so I want to make sure that we get a head count from folks here who would like to go on the tour. The timing is, it starts, we meet at 8 in the morning and it goes to about 12:30. We'll meet at probably a northeast location. We're trying to actually get, we haven't set that yet. And you'll be on the bus from 8 till 12:30. So I need to give a conflict of interest disclosure. I am a volunteer with the Fair Housing Council of Oregon. I'm a volunteer tour guide. I will actually be our tour guide giving the presentation for those 2 tours. On other tours, I've been told this year that I will receive a small stipend for being a tour guide on the bus tours, but I've indicated to the Fair Housing Council that I will not be accepting the stipend for the 2 tours that we are sponsoring as the Human Rights Commission. So, just know that. But, so I will send out an email and please ask you if you can please let me know which days you would like to attend the tour. If you've attended before, please feel free to come again. I am a huge supporter of the tour. I think it's a fantastic event. And then also, if you have folks that you think would benefit in the work they do from attending this tour, it talks about the history of housing discrimination here in Portland. So I'll give you more details about that. So is there anybody that knows right now which days they would like to go? All right, Jeff.
I just want to say that I would love to go again, but I also feel that I, more than that, would want to give the seat to somebody who has not been. I mean, I teach sociology at a community college. I would like to spread the word to that university, that college, and let them know. So.
If you've got some specific folks, maybe a handful, I think that there's probably, I mean, we've got 15 members, and so if we split up, 40 seats over 2 days, that means that we can each invite a couple people, including ourselves. So if you have a couple people that you think would benefit from being on the tour, then ask, let's get them on the bus.
Just contact information we give them.
Or do we give you their? You give me their contact information, because we're gonna have to keep track of the names that are going, so we can coordinate with Donna Maxey at Race Talks to make sure that we know the numbers. So I need to know who they are and that they're committed to going.
And if I could just add that whenever we're striving to be more inclusive of the community and having the right people in the right places, if we can send them a formal letter of invitation, so that we can keep track of that information, and also commendation. So if they actually attend and participate, then what does this mean for our community? So having that track of communication with people. As your departing communications chair, I would like to see that.
Well, I think that's something that we can coordinate on, because we're just putting the word out right now. It actually was just get set up this week. So yeah, I think we should. There will definitely be an invitation, so that we can convey to those folks that there is some expectation that they at a minimum take the information seriously.
And I more so mean personalized from the HRC.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Communication to them that says, here's why we're inviting you and what we think the tour means to our work.
Okay.
So Kenny, if you've never been on that tour, then.
Anything else housing rights?
No, we're working with CDC on the fall roundtable, so I'll give you the update on that.
Just a small thing, but I heard at the Housing Bureau's Bring Equity Forum that the funding for housing assistance, I'm probably butchering that language, has been reduced by 50% at least. So there might be some things for the legislative agenda that was, apparently the legislature communicated with a number of folks about that recently. And I am unaware of that development, so it might be something that we want to track.
Reduced by 50%?
I need a little more information on what pockets of money, what does that really mean, who does that affect and everything, but that's a significant reduction.
Just for an equity conference.
Yeah, the Housing Bureau conference, it was,
A couple of Mondays ago?
or it was really recent, I don't know, it was Monday, thank you, I was like, was it this week? Yeah. So it was Monday
So
over
some
at the
state
Portland
funding,
building.
state funding.
And that was Peggy Peggy mentioned that from South Spacing on Fair
Is
Housing.
it big?
Fair Housing
Where?
Council,
Fair
remember?
Housing.
I was like,
Okay.
okay,
McGuire.
yeah.
Thank you. Finally, Communications Committee. So I sent you all an email asking you for your profile photos, and I received one. So you're under the sound of my voice. Please send me your profile photos. Yes, and I also asked for the profile. So a photo, preferably a bus shot with you clothed. Nowadays, we do have to be very specific because sometimes people go to the beach and take photos. So while it may seem appropriate for home, it may not be appropriate for your commission profile.
Do you guys think that we have,
Oh my God, that's really.
I don't mean to put any like extra work on you, you just started now, but if we like come to OEHR and take a.
And Jeff has offered his services, so
Yeah.
I would say make an appointment with Jeff based on his availability and your schedule, and then have your photo taken. But
I'll take your picture right now, I mean, today, if you need it.
I'm not interested.
he's got a police hat on right now, so. So yes, so if you could send, your profile is basically, 4 to 7 sentences about you, how long you've been on the commission, what your passion, your interests are. Very brief, more personal profile of yourself. So if you could get that to the Communications Committee, please.
The outgoing chair?
And that was my next announcement. I will have to, for the sustainability and my service to the commission, I would love to be of support to whomever would like to be the chair of the Communications Committee. But I think in achieving and staying in the green, as Kenya has appropriately named it, I do need to strike a sense of balance. So it's a great opportunity for our new commissioners to consider. By no means are you being thrusted into that. You don't have to make a decision today. But I will still be a member of the Communications Committee and supportive of whomever chooses to chair the committee.
And right now, that's you and Kyle.
Right now, it's just me.
Oh, Kyle's not any longer on it, okay.
Well, Kyle more so made himself available, but Kyle really has not had the time to focus on communication, so.
I will be assisting as well,
Yeah.
if you're interested.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. So,
Can I just
Yes.
ask a question? Outside of like on the website, which I will be delving into even more so tonight, are there specifications as to what all the different committees, like, I can say, oh yeah, I can send an email, but I mean, what are the different?
so out on the website, there should be a list of each committee.
Yeah,
And we will provide that to you in the new orientation. So, not just the, I don't want to say the book, because I hate to make people feel like that's all you'll get. But I guess the intent for us to create an orientation is to help walk you through each committee. And that's something that we typically haven't been able to provide. So be on the lookout for that, hopefully July. So we'll get you guys ready and determining which committees you'd like to learn more about. So. And the Pride Parade is coming up. Dante will cover the cost, but we have to make sure that we have enough individuals that are available to participate in the Pride Parade. So based on that information, is there anyone here in addition to Diallo who would be interested in walking on behalf of the Human Rights Commission in the Pride Parade?
It's on Saturday.
What do you mean,
It's
cover the
next- or next, is it next Saturday?
It's an
So-
entry cost.
There is an entry cost to participate in the parade.
What's the date? I'm sorry, I usually know.
I
September
think
14th.
it's the 14th.
Oh,
It's the same as Father's Day week.
Yeah,
Right.
so.
I'm interested, as a matter of fact.
Okay, so I'll send out the once we've covered the entry costs,
It's the 14th.
I'll send out the invitation, but the hope is that you participate and carry the banner with pride, literally with pride. And if you have any questions about time and things like that, once we've paid for the entry fee, then we'll send that information out to everyone that's interested. So there's no limit on who can walk in the parade with us. If you've got kids, if you've got family members, the more the merrier. I really enjoyed walking in the the commemorative March on Washington that we had with the Human Rights Commission. It was a great opportunity, people stopping and asking us, well, what is that? So it's definitely a great outreach opportunity, so.
Did we give out brochures? No, that was Donna.
No, we didn't. That was Donna. And so moving on to upcoming events and emerging issues. What I might do, if I can, we're not quite at that time, but go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm thinking 6 o'clock. My mind is ready to wrap up at 6.
I feel like we're almost done.
So upcoming events and emerging issues, the fall roundtable and the CDC report.
So for fall roundtable, I'll just give a quick update on where we are. The fall roundtable forum, for folks who aren't aware of it, is being co-planned with the Community Discovery Committee and the Housing Rights Task Force around specifically finding housing solutions for people without housing, or helping to move forward those solutions. So we're in the kind of conceptual planning phase and doing some outreach right now to city folks and stakeholder groups and organizations to get a sense for how well received our concept might be. Our concept is to put together a half-day forum, kind of an expo that brings together a number of folks who have ideas, say 6 to 12 ideas that would help provide permanent, stable housing for people without housing. Bring together those folks that have ideas or projects that are in progress or are looking to get started, and then bring together stakeholders, the government agencies who might help them remove barriers to moving their projects forward, other organizations in the community that might help their projects move forward, as well as folks who might have lived experience with being on the street to help kind of ground truth some of those projects. So that's the concept. We're reaching out to a number of organizations right now. We've been working with Sisters of the Road and are reaching out to many of the provider organizations. I met with Jennifer Chang and Sally Erickson here in that Portland Housing Bureau. They are in the Housing Access and Retention Program, and they work with the Coordinating Committee to End Homelessness, which had been the group that was holding the 10-year plan to end homelessness here at the city. There's a new group that's also being formed. The follow-on to some of that work is the group called the Home for Everyone Coordinating Board. It's a coordinating board that will help coordinate the cities of Portland and Gresham and Multnomah County and Home Forward. That's just getting started now. It'll be ramping up through the summer. And so one of our thoughts is to, and one of our outcomes is potentially to go to that board with some recommendations out of our roundtable forum. I also met with the Coordinating Committee and Homelessness Steering Committee, which is made up of folks from Multnomah County, City of Portland, and service providers such as Join, Northwest Pilot Project, Northwest Pilot Project?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Charles. And Transition Projects, that's why I almost got to mix up, Transition Projects, Central City Concern. So again, organizations that are working in that arena to talk to them about our idea. And they were very supportive of it, and we're hoping to find some partners there. But we're out, again, doing outreach to, I have a better word for what we're doing, but we're in that conversation period, and then in June we'll do an assessment period to figure out where we are. The plan right now is for this forum to come forward probably in the early fall, like end of September or early October. Anything I missed, Amy?
Beautiful. I would just add,
we're doing information gathering. I thought that's what you were after. And so we invite any of you who have thoughts on a lead for us regarding organizations that are developing solutions or that are piloting solutions. We want to add that to your list, to our list. Specifically, solutions for permanent housing for houseless people.
Or if you work with organizations, if we have connections, then we could also listen to do some of that information gathering. We're actually setting up appointments and meeting with these people. We have a script that we use to gather the information.
I know the conversation around creating housing for individuals without housing has obviously been around resources, financial resources, and who is going to put up the money to provide those resources for housing. Have you all, and if you have not, I would definitely recommend that you consider talking to Meyer Memorial Trust. They, I believe, back in February or January, they hired a new program officer who focuses on housing, and specifically for housing for individuals who are either homeless or low income. So I would definitely be interested in hearing what grant makers have to say. Typically, they have provided from the private sector for solving some of those issues, so.
Yeah, and I'm playing phone tag with Abraham Mubarak of Right to Drink 2 and the Vancouver, the deputy director of the Vancouver Housing Authority as well.
So if you could send us all an email just saying, hey, this is who we've reached out to or we're considering reaching out to, and then if we don't see who we would recommend on that list, then perhaps we could offer up a recommendation.
That list was shared once, but it's with everybody, but it wouldn't hurt to share it again.
Okay.
What Dante had mentioned about the thought that I had around the veterans piece, it fits really well here, I think, and it's that the transition projects, particularly Bud Clark Commons, is leading, sharing the lead with the VA on what's called a National Stand Down Day, where they collect all the veterans and they bring them to a central point, which I think this year is going to be Bud Clark Commons, and they do health, and they do some applications for housing, temporary housing, emergency housing, and then a few that are sort of already in the pipeline for long-term or permanent housing. And so I thought that might be a nice thing for us to maybe look at, because the next connection is with a much larger entity, which is the Veterans Association.
The VA, the actual VA?
The VA is a big leader in this, and the community partner is Transition Projects.
Right, so if we can somehow come up with a contact or two or three as to it's a larger agency, right, as to who would be the best person or department to talk to about this solution or this strategy we're after, that would be great.
It would be Transition Projects, because they're the touch point.
Is it Stacy?
Person that my contact is brand new. She just started working on Monday too. So, and her name is, let me see again. It was a weird thing. So Ray Fukundo works at Portland State University in Veterans Affairs, and it's actually his wife, Naomi, who works at Transition Projects.
Do you know what day the stand down day is?
I don't know what day, but I know it's in September.
Oh, in September, okay. Oh, wow. Okay, that might be.
I have a question. The forum, is the intent to allow time and space for sharing of ideas and networking, and then the development of a shared agenda or next steps, or what is the framing of this?
Do you want me to? I think, so yes, the idea is for networking, for there to be platform for solutions to be presented and that those solutions to be heard by the community as well as city folks. I think we haven't identified specifically what we'll present as next steps. So that's still in progress. Is that true? to you, Alan?
Yeah, I mean, for me, my assumption would be that, you know, just like here, you know, we would be working in that sort of Dave area, more along the AVE part. So I think we're gonna come out with advocacy, education, or disability as our outcomes. Most likely the advocacy, where it makes sense, like that, right, for everyone board. You know, obviously, it's something with the city, depending on what we come up with as barriers. Can we help advocate for the removal of those barriers?
I mean, I think one of the outcomes is accomplished in that it's to give visibility to what's already out there. But the second one, yeah, it could be that we've been introduced to an initiative that we feel like we're good. And I think we probably would be okay if we keep that open-ended, you know. I would be okay if we keep that open-ended. Our main goal is we're giving a platform. Our secondary goal is we're open to receiving a possible suggestion for maybe HRTF moving forward. That might be an HRTF call.
We just need to be mindful, I think, of what we can do and what we should promise folks as far as outcomes. And, you know, our strategic our strategic efforts are around that advocacy and disability piece, and whether or not we can pick up more than that, we would have to see as a result of that, as a result of the actual form itself.
Okay, thank you. So Kyle reminded us that the Latino Health Equity Conference is on the 13th. If anyone is available to attend, sounds like there's one ticket remaining. So let us know before he extends that invitation to the broader community.
What time is it?
All the days.
It's
all day.
gonna be available.
Friday the 13th.
Are we an announcement?
We are, did you have something?
That was
I'm
a-
sorry. Go ahead.
Today I held the Human Rights Commission tag on my shoulder as I attended the Oregon Health Equity Alliance event. So it's a brand new coalition Kickstarter event, Care Oregon, Family Care, Causa, APANA, CIO, Oregon Latino Health Coalition. And it was really great. It was an all-day event, excellent sociology around health equity. If anybody wants to pick my brain about that, you may.
Thank you for attending. So our July meeting, as it stands right now, falls on July 2nd. And based on the feedback we received today, we need to determine whether or not we're going to have a July meeting on the 2nd, or change the date, or,
Is it because of Independence Day?
yes.
I won't be
Questions,
here on the
concerns?
2nd.
Okay, you won't be here. Anyone else? Out? Vacation? Conflicts? Okay.
And the meeting is standardly 4 to 6:30. Is that
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
First, if we move it, it'll be on the 9th, right?
But it sounds like it can happen.
We were talking about, is this again, we started meeting at 3? Or is that been?
I think for the orientation piece, we did want to meet at 3 o'clock. So our new commissioners and the last class, so Emmanuel, Sam, myself, Linda.
There's a chance they may not be confirmed by then.
Okay.
But that, I mean, you
Okay.
just won't be able to vote, you'll certainly be able to participate, just like today, obviously.
Okay. So the next, let's see. Yeah, I would say yes. We would meet at 3.
And those people who are gonna lead that orientation, they're available?
So the individuals who have provided their assistance were Kyle and Malloy. And so I'll reach out to them to see if they're available. If they're not, I'll plan to deliver whatever they contributed, plan to contribute. So we will meet on July 2nd, is that the
I might try to
understanding?
come in by phone.
So you want to come in by phone?
Maybe, I'll see you around. Yeah.
Okay. Give you some time to determine if you like us around that time. Maybe busy popping by. Okay,
6:30.
so we will meet on July 2nd at 3 o'clock for orientation from 3 to 4, and then pick up with our regularly scheduled meeting at 4 p.m. Now it's time for public comment announcements.
So we have Isabel Sheridan, Crystal Contreras,
Oh, those were the ladies that were up here speaking.
Lavon Heaster.
Hello, your semi-regular PCOD update.
We have some new folks, so could you explain what PCOD is?
I was just thinking that I needed to do that. Portland Commission on Disability. Okay, and people who see me every month know I don't normally wear an eye patch. I happen to have an eye infection, but, so just ignore it. I feel very embarrassed. The Portland Commission on Disability, this was sent out to emails, is having the same day as the Latino thing, is happening on June 13th. We are having a panel discussion about race, disability, and intersectionality. And it's going to be heavily emphasis on people with lived experiences. So we will provide a little bit of data, but it will really be people telling their stories. It will be for an hour at the end of our regular commission meeting. It will be from 12:30 to 1:30. And it will be in this room right here. And if you didn't get the email, I would say, yeah, Sonji can make sure that you get it if for some reason you weren't included in that
And
email.
Amy's
Amy did a great job. I was like, she was on it. Made me very happy.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
We also invited DEEP, which is the Diverse Empowered Employees of Portland, the city of Portland, to this, and the ADA coordinators, and I don't remember who else, but it may also be an opportunity for you to meet some of the other folks that are employed by the city of Portland who are involved in equity work. The other event that's coming up, and this one won't be until July, is that we have an ADA celebration, Americans with Disabilities Act. And it happens on the 26th of July. Every year is the anniversary. We're at 24 years, so we're gearing up for the 25th year month by having a big one this year about ADA, what does it stand for? Because a lot of people don't really know, and we get comments all the time, oh, well, doesn't the ADA cover that? And it's like, no, it doesn't cover that. So we're trying to get people not only in the disability community involved, but in the larger equity communities involved. So there's more of an understanding about what is this all about? What is Americans with Disabilities Act all about? And where does it fall short? Because it falls really short, in particular, the blind community, the deaf community, and many of the communities with hidden disabilities, mental health community. It falls really short for a lot of us.
What time will that be?
That will be on July 26th, which is a Saturday, at Dishman, and it will be at 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock.
And about the other event on the 13th, you said people will be giving a personal testimony.
Yes.
Can we, are you guys, is that open for people, or is it?
It's actually, we've already set a group of folks, but I may actually be talking to you according to how things shake out.
Okay.
Because we are actually working to get folks paid for their sharing their personal experience, and we're trying to keep it balanced between different ages, different types of disabilities, and different ethnic groups, so that we kind of have a really nice rounded group to present to you. Then the last thing, this is just kind of, and all this, the ADA stuff will start being publicized very soon, so we will actually have a flyer at your next July meeting, and I will make sure it gets sent out to all y'all. Especially now that Jeff is kind of moved into a new position, he can help make sure these things get around. And then I just want to thank Diallo because he has agreed. We are doing a video on youth civic engagement, and Diallo has agreed to be one of our people who we're going to feature. So we're going to feature our youth commissioner, Diallo, and then a group of young folks from the Muslim Educational Trust. And they're going to be talking, basically we have to have a meeting to figure it all out, but our theme we wanted to go with is, what is your passion? How can you make a difference? To help give youth kind of an idea of how can you get involved and how can you actually make something change. So, thank you very much.
I have a question for you, Levon, since you're here. Does your commission do any work around housing and
Yes,
homelessness? Okay.
Not so much around homelessness, but around housing a ton, because I have a friend who was looking for an apartment and it took her 2.5 years because she couldn't find anything that was accessible and within her price range.
Because one of the things that I discovered in information gathering around the forum was that, there's a very high percentage of people living on the street that also identify with a disability. I think the number was 45%. And so it really made me think that, there may be a role for us to work together on this roundtable forum.
Yeah, I think it would be great. We do have accessibility in the built environment, which works a lot on housing issues. And so I would think that it's, I've tried to begin to hook that group up as the co-chair of the Public Outreach and Awareness Subcommittee. I'm trying to work to hook those two groups together. But absolutely, it is a place where I think that there's a lot of partnering that could happen.
Okay. Yeah, I remember seeing that work.
Yeah, it's I think it would be great if someone actually from the community would go in and present to them, because they are a group that brings in a lot of presenters and learns a lot. So it's a great place to go and bring some information.
I just want to say thanks, Levon, for coming into the Human Rights Commission meetings regularly. It's good to have that.
Well, I do see us as sister commissions very much, and so much of the work that we're doing, you guys are also doing, so it's always good to know where we can partner and how we can work together.
Thank you.
Charles Johnson.
Thank you. Good evening, Commissioner. If you do the Fair Housing Tour, be sure you get the Every Door Open at Fair Housing wristband that we had last year at Pride. I don't know if it was available for the tour, but oh look, the Fair Housing guy is like, he doesn't know.
I usually give out shots to you like that. Look into that.
So yeah. And I also want to thank you for your question to the bond at the end. Today, I'm not even going to go into the details of the person's name, but they did appoint a new person to the Home Forward board. And the two people that were there for Home Forward were sage, white men, probably a little bit older than me, perhaps a little fancier shaven haircut, but made me wonder about how well that particular agency is addressing equity in its leadership. And then when Levon spoke, it raises the question of, I see the Human Rights Commission as having, two primary things: reducing oppression and assuring equality of opportunity for people so that they're not discriminated against. And when we look at housing for people who are facing any kind of challenge, whether it's racial bias or bias for disability or whatever, do we know if their needs are really, if there's systemic discrimination against them? Because we don't know Portland Housing, if Home Forward and those agencies actually even have a plan where they know there are this many people in Multnomah County who have limited income, fixed income, disability, whatever, it seems that there's an element of neglect in the planning there to say, well, we know Home Forward manages X number of units, plus there's this number of Section 8. Unfortunately, there's 2,374 more people than that cannot afford market rate housing. And you know, in the last 2 years, I've engaged with the coordinating committee to end homelessness also, and at times I've had some energy to look through their spreadsheet about Reach has this many units and Central City Concern has this many units, but I've never heard any systemic discussion of why there's this number of units, or you know, why are we always looking at it not assessing the demand, what's the need there. So I hope that looking at that broad view of human rights, we can look at that. The other thing that is related is maybe doing a little bit more and partnering better with disabilities people to see that anybody who has the skill set or with training can develop the skill set can maximize their independence and personal income to be less stuck in the bureaucracy of living in Northwest Towers or wherever it is. I think that that is part of human rights, is making sure that government and public service systems work to make sure there are no barriers or even equal assistance. You know, for a person who's comes from a college-educated background or mostly, you know, white college-educated parents background, to say that they can compete equally with somebody who's doesn't have those same privileges growing up, I think is something that this body is, you know, sees under the scope of human rights. Specifically to the CPRC, whose task I don't envy, relating with the challenges that the Portland Police Bureau sometimes faces. I hope that those of you who are doing CPRC work will think about ways to approach what is becoming a growing public perception that the Bureau is top-heavy, that too much money is going to administrative captaincies and not enough to reducing violence and misconduct among the police, and just generally good community policing programs where cops don't hide in their cars but actually get out and talk as equals to the people in their neighborhoods. So I know that's difficult because you have to have a good working professional relationship with the same person. You might be saying, do you really need to be a captain? Should they have even promoted you and made this captaincy? But it's a question that I think has to be asked if people who are not impressed with the conduct or suspicious of the status of the Portland Police Department are going to feel more comfortable and more involved in making it safer. And communications, I look forward to maybe talking some more about having consistent information to talk about media sources that do a better job of, you know, that aren't the Oregonian, that aren't mainstream, to, you know, to ensure good connection with the scanner. And, you know, I know there's at least 2 Latino-focused papers that I see in front of the Mexican consulate when I'm over there, and that you know, there's these some networks that can complement the work of this commission. And talking about employment and income opportunities might also be interesting if there can someday be some interfacing between this commission and or OEHR and Labor Commissioner Brad Bacon's office. I think that when we look at growing, or hopefully not growing, at least in the Portland area, wealth disparity, we need to also, when we talk about equality of opportunity, we need to look at how many people are out of the workforce. I think the UN Declaration on Human Rights talks about the right to meaningful work, and so that's something that, you know, helps us build a more diverse and integrated community, is when we look to try and structure our society so that there are jobs that people can get satisfaction from and have an opportunity for advancement. And when last time I saw Brad Bacon, when he appeared before the city council, made a little bit of a remark about what does the unemployment number really mean? Do we really want to talk about how many people are employed versus how many people are shut out of the system, perhaps to make people more desperate to work jobs that aren't really optional. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Charles.
Any last minute announcements from the commission?
Bring up if you don't get announcements about the city club, they're doing one of their Friday forums is on the efforts to end homelessness in the city. And I don't know if it's this Friday or next Friday.
It's part 2.
It is part 2? Okay. So that's
Is there anything else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
You can kind of just do, I always like to do that.
Have a good evening.